All right. Hey, Miss Shantia, how's everything going? Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, everything is going wonderful, amidst this COVID pandemic that we're dealing with, but I'm super excited to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you were able to come on to the podcast. I had the pleasure of meeting Shantia back last summer at the Unity Conference. And so we kicked it off, we kept in contact. And I think that she has a lot to offer around the subject of sickle cell. And so if you guys are not aware, this coming week is Sickle Cell Day. And so I would love for you to just shed some light on what that means, and what you and your organization, what do you guys have planned for this huge day that's coming up this week?
Yes, and so we had a lot of interesting things planned, but a lot of those things were impersonal. But of course, now, everybody and every organization has to kind of transition to this virtual way of doing things now. And so, actually, we have our Shine the Light on Sickle Cell Disease happening on Friday, June the 19th. And so, this is going to happen virtually on our social media platform.
Oh, nice.
Facebook, and so it is completely, virtual and live, and so everybody is more than welcome to participate. And so this is just where we're going to, you know, bring global awareness to the campaign to celebrate, World Sickle Cell Awareness Day, and we're going to have, friends and families, those that have been affected by sickle cell disease, or loved ones have been diagnosed with sickle cell disease, and really just help to bring awareness to still the challenges that individuals who are diagnosed with sickle cell disease are facing.
Okay. So tell us in a nutshell, what is sickle cell? What does that mean for us out there that are not too familiar with it?
Yes, and so I'll give you two versions of sickle cell disease. And
Okay. Break it down.
break it down. So sickle cell disease is basically an inherited disease. And so
Okay.
it's not anything that you can catch, but it is caused by an abnormal hemoglobin that is in your red blood cells. And this is what you are born with. If you have two parents who have sickle cell disease, or if you have a parent who has sickle cell disease and maybe sickle cell trait, there's a very variation of how a baby is born with sickle cell disease. And so what it really looks like is, our blood shapes are these really nice, round, kind of squishy shaped things, and they flow through all of the, our blood cells, our organs, everything in our body. For individuals that are diagnosed with sickle cell disease, their red blood cells are not actually circled. They're shaped like Captain's Hook from Peter
Yeah.
Pan.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so that's how their blood shapes are shaped. And so what happens is that if you can imagine, if you have something that is hook shaped
Hmm.
and blood vessels and you kind of can get stuck together, that's what happens in sickle cell disease patients. Their blood cells aren't easily movable through their body system. And sometimes they actually get stuck. And when blood cells get stuck inside of a vessel or anything, it causes excruciating pain for the patients.
Hmm.
And so that is, in a visualization, what sickle cell disease is.
Wow. So usually, how does somebody find out? I mean, are they just like in a lot of pain? What type of symptoms and stuff would they have?
Well, the good thing is that majority of the states actually also newborn sickle cell screening, and so that is a part of the grant that the national organization, sickle cell disease organization, we have with a lot of the community-based organizations, where any infant that is born in a any infant that is born is actually tested for certain genetic diseases and disorders, and sickle cell disease is one of those. And so
Okay.
majority of the time, parents are aware that their child is diagnosed at birth with sickle cell disease.
Okay. So is there, as far as demographics, are there more men, women, Latinos, African American who have this trait?
Yes, well, unfortunately, individuals from an African American descent are more affected by sickle cell disease. And so it is a disease and disorder that affected by minority individuals.
So this is, I always love to know, how did people end up where they are? So tell us, how did you end up working in the sickle cell area, and how did you end up working with community health workers? Not only working with them, but also supervising them as well.
Yes, and so I have always had a love and passion for, community service. And
Hmm.
my background is really I have an undergrad degree in social work, and then I attained my master's degree in health systems management. But I've always been in fields of healthcare as it relates to outreach. Um,
Hmm.
services, linking individuals to care. And that has just always been my passion. And so I've done, outreach and community engagement probably for the last 15 years or so. And I've transitioned to working with community health workers in 2017 with the Maryland Area Health Education Center here in Baltimore, Maryland. And I just fell in love with this profession. The idea of having individuals from the community serving as that gap, working with the community and also working with the healthcare providers to really help individuals with their care, whether that is helping them to identify transportation services, being that listening ear, being that translator, as we like to say, between medical providers and the patients. And I just really, was amazed by the work that they do. And then also I was very, passionate by how underutilized community
Yes.
workers were.
Hmm. Hmm.
Especially being, first and foremost a social worker. And sometimes we know sometimes that's that blurred line
Yeah.
between the two professions. And so I started working as a CHW trainer.
Okay. So you were instructing the CHWs. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I started instructing CHWs for a grant to help with workforce development and really working with stakeholders and executive levels for major hospitals, really helping them to underline how they can best utilize CHWs
Mhm.
in their organizations. With that, I then got a call with the National Organization for Sickle Cell Disease, and they had a community health worker training program that they had started, but they were really looking for someone that understood the CHW profession,
Mhm.
had experience with working with various organizations on different levels, state, local, and national, because
Mhm.
they are a national organization. And I really was interested because my daughter actually has sickle cell trait.
Okay.
Yes. And
Okay.
so the funny thing is that when she was born, they do the testing and the doctor said, oh, she has the trait, but you don't have to worry about it. Don't worry about it till she has kids. And literally that's what majority of parents are told if their child is diagnosed with sickle cell trait, because 1 in every 12 African Americans are actually born with sickle cell trait. And
Mm.
so I completely, forgot about it because
Mhm.
baby, I didn't have to worry about anything. But once I got to understand the importance of knowing about sickle cell trait, because that is potentially what could lead to a child being born with actual sickle cell disease. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was more so that I needed to know what I needed to prepare for potentially with my child, because
Mhm.
a lot of individuals who are born with sickle cell trait really don't know that they have the trait until it's too late.
Mm.
There's no signs and symptoms. You don't have to go to the doctors. There's nothing. There's no medical care for with sickle cell trait like there is with the actual sickle cell disease. And so that is a way that an infant is born with sickle cell disease if two individuals that have the traits, have a child,
Mhm.
and that child is going to be born with sickle cell disease.
Oh, wow. So you had experience working with CHWs. You were instructing them, so you were able to see how they can be utilized, and on the flip side, how they weren't being utilized. And so then you got put in a role where you were familiar with the information, and it almost seems like a role that was built just for you. And now you're able to lead CHWs and to go out into the community and disseminate the education and information to community members. So the sickle cell, they have this program for CHWs. How can people get information about, you utilizing this program if they have CHWs, they want to get this same training? How does that work?
Absolutely. And so the first thing that you can do is visit our website, www.sicklecelldisease, all one word, .org. And there you'll find lots of information about sickle cell disease. You'll find information. We have a whole repository for information for CHWs, whether you're working in the sickle cell disease or not, because you may come in contact with, a patient or a family that has sickle cell disease, and we want to make sure that everybody has that information. And so there you can find information about upcoming events, and then also about any upcoming trainings. Actually, we do a wonderful monthly training called Power CHW training, and that is where we are constantly bringing various different topics, different subject matters centered around CHW's work in sickle cell disease. We also have a peer-to-peer mentor program for individuals and families with sickle cell disease, because sometimes, just like the role of a CHW, individuals may need that outside community support of someone that has actually, gone through some of the struggles and challenges that our patients with sickle cell disease have. When they are transitioning from, pediatric to adult care, some of our sickle cell patients, they don't want to leave their pediatric doctors. For one, because it's hard to find a hematologist that actually treat adult sickle cell patients. And so huge challenges that we have in this field. And so a lot of our sickle cell patients are staying with their pediatricians until they're like 22, 23 years old.
Wow.
A pediatrician hematologist, because that's where they feel comfortable, they've been there all their life, and they're receiving care. And so can you imagine having this disease or disorder, and you're now 23 and you're sitting across from a 5-year-old?
Yeah.
And also think about it, the transition of growing up. What does that look like going off to college or somewhere, especially if, you may have difficulties or challenges receiving care where you go. And then also a lot of our patients actually are hospitalized very frequently. And so it's the challenges of that. When they are seeking treatment, a lot of them are faced with the stereotype of being a drug seeker, because sickle cell is something that you can't physically see. It's felt eternally for these patients. And so I used to be a school nurse, and they never trained us on sickle cell disease. And so once I got into this field and I thought about all those children that could potentially have came into my nurse's suite and complained that their body was hurting, and all I did was take their temperature and gave them a cup of water because I couldn't see anything physically wrong with them. And so that's why it's so important for, everybody to be aware, of sickle cell disease, aware of some of the struggles and challenges, especially the stereotypes that a lot of our patients really face.
And I think that it's important, I always have like a bucket of resources. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like you said earlier, even if that's not something that your patient is dealing with, they may, be coming to talk to you about maybe the grandma, the grandpa, or a child or whomever in their household. And so you have those resources, or a friend of a friend, to give them. And so I think this is a wonderful program. And so this is free, correct?
The power training is free.
Okay.
The 11-week CHW training, which goes over, of course, all of the recommended core competencies for CHWs. But then we also added that sickle cell disease specific component to the training. And so there is a fee for that training, but we do have various resources for individuals that are interested in taking that training too as well.
Awesome. Awesome. So in Baltimore, Maryland, what's the process for becoming a CHW there?
So we just really within the last, I would say in the last year, got regulation for certification for
Yay!
CH.
I
Yes,
don't know how you feel about that because I'm in Texas. So
I was super excited. And
okay, good.
I was on the grassroots at the beginning stages of the certification process, going up to, legislation,
Mhm.
getting individuals together to give testimonies, trying to get everybody involved about the importance of this profession and why it should be recognized. And so once, the announcement came out and, it was passed through legislation, I mean, oh my goodness, we were just super excited. And so we had, of course, a tiered certification. And so for those individuals that have been working within the in the community health worker field, you could be grandfathered in with so many hours of documented hours of working in the CHW profession. And then for individuals who completed training, you had to do your 140 hours of training and then your 40 hours of field placement.
Awesome. So for y'all that are listening, because some people are fans of the certification process and some are not, and so I mean it's your preference. However, I believe that when you have this in place, it definitely moves the needle for the profession, and it helps just concrete the profession, and how solid it is, and the work that CHWs are doing is effective. And there is research behind that. And so the more people that we can get to hop on the train, my belief is better. And so that's great news to hear that you guys have that going. Um, so as a supervisor, because sometimes there are challenges when supervising CHWs, what are some challenges that you have came across, and how have you been able to um, cross the bridge to success with those challenges?
Yes, and so there are several different challenges that you face supervising CHWs. One of the challenges, and the first that I really look at, is the challenges of how this CHW is going to be utilized effectively
Mm.
within an organization, whether it's a community-based organization, a hospital setting, things of that nature. And I do a lot of work with community-based organizations with from sickle cell disease population, but also consulting for other organizations of really the best practice of how to effectively implement CHWs inside of your program,
Mhm.
because that really takes some time to looking at the structure of your organization, who your employees are currently, the roles that they are currently, doing, and then how CHWs are going to be best fit and suited for that particular organizational structure. And so a lot of times that, as a supervisor, going inside of those boardrooms and having those hard conversations and saying some things that you're like, oh goodness, they're not going to want to hear this.
Mhm.
But, this is what's going to be best if you choose, to have a CHW come on board on your team.
Mhm.
And so I think that's one of the key areas, especially when we're looking at the CHW field and profession, that you have to have individuals in certain places that can advocate for the CHWs by truly knowing what their roles, responsibilities, and also what they're capable of doing. My second challenge has been sometimes, because we are CHWs from the community and things of that nature, sometimes it takes that mentorship and that coaching, especially with new CHWs coming on board. Just
So what do
working.
you mean when you say that? Do you mean somebody that is not familiar with health care at all, or somebody that is just newly certified? What do you mean when you say that?
Sometimes it's both.
Mhm.
Um, Healthcare field is very different. than many other fields. There's a lot of, and this is just not about, confidentiality, HIPAA, and all of those things. You're really working and dealing with somebody's health. And when you're talking about somebody's health, there's all types of feelings and emotions and, things that come along with it, and really understanding how, empathy is going to be really important for your work as a CHW. In understanding those professional and personal boundaries that go along with, being in this particular profession. And then also, when it comes to individuals that are newly coming into the work environment, period, because there are a lot of, coaching of, things that need to be done. And especially since I'm a key advocate of professional development. And so I'm always looking for ways of how I can provide professional development services to myself, and also for my CHWs that are working on my team, because that's how you are going to continue to keep up to date with things that are going on, recognizing best practices. That's a way for you to learn and grow. And so I think that is really important, especially for individuals that are supervising CHWs, to understand that they are going to need that support system, even support system as it relates to self-care. And stress management, because we are working in depth and hearing individual and patient stories, hearing some of the things that they are going through. And we also, are faced with the challenges of assisting and educating and supporting them to get through those things to reach their goals.
I think you just said a sermon. I mean, like, so many nuggets, y'all. I know you guys that are listening, CHWs and instructors, supervisors that are listening, know exactly what she's talking about, especially when you talk about mentorship. Because as you said, many times I've had the experience of hearing individuals that are in a role of leadership that have no clue how to utilize CHWs. And so, sometimes they may be doing filing when they can be utilized in a much better way that would produce a better outcome for the organization and the community. And so I think that it also takes, because you said also for yourself, professional development. And so if you are not in the know in how to do that, well, then seek the knowledge so that you can bring your team up, because you're the leader. And so everybody's following you. So if that's what you got to do, then that's what you got to do. And, that comes with open conversation too. I think right now with the world and where we are, there are so many different conversations that are going on. And it really takes us to do a lot of self-reflection and self-work for ourselves to know how we can best be an advocate for the field and for the work that we're doing out in the community. So thank you for saying that as a supervisor and transparent. And saying that, that sometimes you gotta, we all have to want to grow together.
Yes.
So as we were talking about self-care, I know you stay busy. You stay busy, you're a mom and you're working full time and you're teaching. What do you do for self-care?
Oh, good. I actually make sure that I schedule my time.
Okay.
I do. And like you said, just being, busy with, being a mom. I have 3 kids, and my, oldest is getting ready to enter his senior year in high school, working full time, training. I'm a part of a couple different community organizations and sit on a board. And so a lot of times I have to schedule my self-care time. I also have to make sure that I'm doing a check-in. I call it a wellness check-in for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Where I actually am, because a lot of times we can just keep going and going and going and going without taking the time and opportunity to say, wait a minute, how am I doing today? Especially when we're doing, this work, with individuals, and, our love and passion is to help individuals. And as, we all have heard before, you can't help somebody unless you're able to help yourself. And sometimes able to take care of yourself. And so for me, self-care is very important. And so a lot of times that means like me making sure that I am scheduling time to take care of myself. And it may seem silly, but I literally put it in my planner. I say today is me day. It's Tia day. And so today means is that's that time away from being a mom, being a supervisor, being a wife. It's just all about Tia, and not feel guilty about that, because sometimes we can feel guilty about taking that time and opportunity just for ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether, time just spending reading, writing. I know when I was finishing up college, I used to do a weekend away. And so once a month, I would take a weekend and I would literally schedule time. Sorry. I would literally schedule time for me to go away for the weekend. And I needed that. I needed that time.
I think that it's important that we all schedule, time. I love that because one of the things that I do for time management is I time chunk, and meaning that I have times that I do things. So like I'm not the person like I'm working on a project and I'm checking my email at the same time and then I'm going to go answer the phone and do things like that. Because look, girl, I already am all over the place. So if I start doing all of that, it's just not going to get done. So I really trained myself to do time chunking so that I can complete goals in the way that works for me. And so I really love that you schedule the time because when you work in the community, I tell people all the time, especially when we were some of us are still in the state of staying at home, social distancing, but especially during that time when people couldn't get out and about. When you work in the community, the work does not stop. People still know how to get in contact with you. So, yeah.
They do. I remember my work when I was doing, I was working in infectious disease field. And I lived in the community that I was working in. And, I've lived in that community all my life. And so everybody, it's just a neighborhood community. I remember I was sitting outside on my steps. It was like probably 11 o'clock at night. I was having my me time. My kids were asleep. It was quiet. I was just having my me time.
Or so you thought.
So I thought, because I was sitting out on the steps and all of a sudden, one of my clients came walking down the street. Now, mind you, my clients know I have a very strict, I'm keen on boundaries. And them know, especially since, the field that I'm working in, everybody knew I was working in infectious disease. So I'm like, hey, you're my patient, my client. And so, if we see each other out in the community, I will not speak to you. Don't take it offensive. My way to protect you, or that you're not associated directly with me. But my patients don't care about that. And so I call them my babies. I was just sitting on the steps minding my business, and my patient came walking down the street, and she sat right on the steps with me, sat down, put her bags down, and just wanted to talk. And I was just like, I started looking for them. I'm like, okay, it's really going to happen. And so they it's a challenge. I've had that in grocery stores and people just coming up to you. But here's the thing, I appreciate that, because then that means that you are doing an amazing job. That means that you're building.
There's that trust there. That's the definition of a community health worker, a frontline public health worker who is a trusted member of the community.
And and that's what that meant, and I had to look at it that way. I'm like, they trust me. And that's what you need. You need to build that rapport, that relationship with, your clients, and so that they are willing to be open with you. Because unless they're willing to be open with you because they find you trustworthy, you're never going to get sometimes to the root of some of the situations in order to be able to assist them.
Yep, I agree. So this is the part where we kind of have a little bit of fun and just learn a little bit more about you. And so I know that you've been working in public health for a very long time. But if there was another job that you could do, what would it be?
Another job that I would do. I think I would be a lawyer.
Oh,
I think
okay.
I would be a lawyer. I think it's because I love to I love to debate. So I love to, if I know something and if I
Uh-huh.
believe something is true, I
Yeah.
find it's my passion, you know, to
Awesome.
make you.
Awesome. You'd be a lawyer. That's kind of cool. So, where would, if you could go anywhere in the world right now, anywhere, God knows I've been like Googling my little heart out about travel since I can't go nowhere. But if you
Mhm.
could go anywhere in the world right now, where would you want to go and why?
I would want to go to Italy.
Nice.
I would want to go to Italy. It's just something about even the sound. You see how it even sounds different coming out your
Yeah. You guys should see her how she looks to Italy. That
Yeah,
was nice. Awesome. If you could have a lunch with anybody dead or alive, who would it be?
I'm sorry, Beyonce. I'm
Oh, not yeah.
a Beyonce fan.
Queen
I'm
bee.
Queen Bee. I'm a Beyonce fan. I want to have lunch with Queen Bee herself.
Awesome. Well, thank you for playing along. I think that you were doing some amazing work. You guys, again, World Sickle Cell Day is coming up June 19th. You guys, I will leave all of the information, contact information in the show notes. But give it to them one more time, the website where they can follow you and connect with you if they have any questions.
Absolutely. And so our website is www.sicklecelldisease.org. That is the official website for the National Sickle Cell Disease Association. If anybody needs to get in touch with me about anything related to sickle cell disease, my email address is sfitzgerald@sicklecelldisease.org.
Awesome. 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 Well, I will drop those details. Thank you so much again. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.